to Women in Art Fair. I'm Jacqueline Harvey, the Fair Director, and it's such an absolute pleasure today to have a talk about queer art. I'm very, very happy to introduce Gemma Rolls-Bentley, who's going to chair this discussion. I'm so made up because we've been on such a journey. Gemma, I've seen Gemma grow from back in our gallery days, from being an advocate of artists and their development at Artsy, to being an activist, really, of queer art and promoting everything to do with women in art, those identifying as women in art. And she's just a fantastic person. She's got a book out at the moment, so you can all have a look at that afterwards. But I'll leave now Gemma to introduce our wonderful guests. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jacqueline. Sorry. Hi everyone, it's really nice to be here. It is such a pleasure to be here at this fair. I hope everyone's had a chance to look around at the gorgeous work. There's a lot of really great stuff to see here. And yeah, as Jacqueline said, we've known each other for a really long time. And for me, it was really nice to be invited to come and host a conversation about queer art within this context, because what's happening here with the fair, the work that Jacqueline, Elena, Teresa are all doing together to bring this together is very much thinking about how artists who come from different identity groups can really be championed and supported, thinking particularly about women, and a lot of my work is thinking about women but also other marginalised identities, and specifically the LGBTQIA+ community. So I think it's interesting to be talking within this context and thinking about what it all means, how we might expand some of those labels, and really just what we can all do to help ourselves and each other. So I'm really delighted that Daniel Lismore and Bex Wade are here with me, two great friends who I admire very much, and who are just both real pioneers in the worlds of queer creativity. Daniel, you describe yourself as a living sculpture, which I'm obsessed with as a description, and I'm going to ask you to dig into that in a minute. But you have your own artistic practice, you are involved in lots of activism, community building, you're always there, really shining a light on other people and people that need it. You really use your platform, for the greater good, which I respect so much. And yeah, so there's lots that we can talk about together. And Bex is an absolutely brilliant photographer. We first got to know each other when I was, a long time ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when we were a pair of baby daddies on the lesbian scene, first in London. But Bex, I always see at all of the protests and marches, and Bex for a long time has been doing really important work to document the queer scene. So that began very much in party spaces, that's realistically where we first were hanging on. And then that has moved much more into protest marches, pride moments, festivals, and the moments when people come together to publicly celebrate but also call for action. And Bex we can talk about it more, but in a really exciting moment in their career, I would say, where some work has recently been acquired by the V&A, is on permanent display there. We'd love to see it, and has got a whole host of exciting things coming up in the year ahead, which we can hear more about. So please can everyone just join me first of all in welcoming our brilliant panelists. Okay, so that's me talking about what I think about both of you, fangirling you both. But I would love to hear in your own words. So Daniel, let's start with living sculpture. Expand, please.
Yeah, so I guess I started as a model, and when I was younger, my agency told me I couldn't dress interestingly. I turn up with like my crotch ripped out and jeans and t-shirt slashed and my mum's orange Elizabeth Martin makeup. And then I discovered the nightlife in London, and I had seen what I didn't really know at the beginning, but I'd seen the aftermath of the taboo scene, the Lee Bowery scene. They'd all either sadly died of AIDS, or they were getting older, and some of them were still on the scene. So I discovered that and decided to wear masks for a while. And then every week I would come up with a few outfits, concepts of dressing and covering my face because I couldn't be seen out as one. It was one or the other. And it accidentally kind of happened. I was inspired by the work of Stephen Arnold, the photographer, and David LaChapelle, and I kind of questioned the world of why don't we look like these commercials? Why don't we look like these images? Everyone's selling all this stuff and saying, here's this commercial billboard thing. We're never going to look like that. So I challenged that, I guess, and I kind of got away with it. And I would find things on the street like bin liners and prosthetic legs and turn them into headpieces or whatever, like just trash. And over time I started to work in fashion. And the idea of living sculpture, I heard about Gilbert and George. And they were the first living sculptures, and they've got an amazing museum now. And today, all three of us are on the cover of the Stanford, which I guess validates a living sculpture in a way. So, some people question it, but this is how I live my life, and I've lived like that for 23 years. I was like 2 days old when I started. So I guess this is how I live. Like I just ran through. I'm so sorry I'm late, by the way. I just ran through the whole city trying to get here because everything's closed. So I go shopping like this. I do everything like this. I even went to my chemist today. That's a surprise for them.
Absolutely worth the wait, and nice surprise for them, because that's, I think, what's so fabulous about you living a life like this is that you're spreading joy and creativity. We all know that we're facing so many challenges in our world right now. It's very bleak out there. And actually to be doing something that's joyful and really expressive, I think it's inspiring for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, there's been people before me, and there's younger people now that are saying, in Coventry, where I'm from, I did the City of Culture show, and about 50,000 people come, and the whole city's dressing up, and like some of these young people are going, I want to be a living sculpture too, and I think that's so wonderful, why not, But most people think it's a performance, it's actually how I live, so maybe other people are performance artists, and lots of people go, you are a performance artist, and I'm like, never even thought about that, it's kind of weird. But I think my mum said my life was a performance maybe, but I don't know, I don't see it as performative at all. I never changed my personality, I don't change anything when I look like this, or if my hair's out, I've got a cap.
Yeah, this is just you. I thought it was interesting how when you were talking, you talked a bit about the clubs and how that's kind of where it started. And my book, it's called, I called it Queer Art from Canvas to Club and the Spaces Between. And a lot of the art that it looks at is really thinking about what space means to the LGBTQIA+ community. And clubs are such an important space for our community. It's very much, it can often be the place where people go to find themselves, to find a sense of self, to find each other, to find freedom. Historically that's very much been the case because we have lived, in this country through lots of laws that have restricted the way we live, and there are laws like that still all over the world. So underground clubs and the subculture that comes with it have been such an important part of our community, and it's where so many of us can come together. And of course, I think it's always important to remember that home is not always a safe space for people. And so finding these alternative spaces to build our communities and chosen families are really important. And so Bex, I think it's really wonderful that your career also began in those spaces. So perhaps you could just introduce your practice and how it began and what you were up to in the clubs.
Thank you, Gemma, very much. Hi everyone, I'm Bex. My pronouns are they, them, and that's really important for me to just start with because I'm situating myself here in a space that's supposedly for women artists, identified as trans and non-binary, but I'm so happy to be part of this space. So thank you, I just want to say I'm here and I'm very proud to be here. Going back to your question, Gemma. Yeah, I started in the dance floors and the bars, actually of Brighton in 2005. I had moved down there before I was moving back to Bristol. I grew up in Leicester. I'm also from the Midlands. Well done, we got out. And I wanted to explore what a space felt like after 2003 marked the end of Section 28. Some people in this room probably don't know what Section 28 is or was. It was a law that Maggie Thatcher brought in, basically which prohibited the promotion of homosexuality in schools and local authorities. And that meant from 1998 until 2003, you couldn't say that you were queer, you couldn't say that you were gay, you couldn't say that you were anything other than straight. And that was something that I grew up under. I'm 42, we're of a similar age, Daniel. Sorry, I just outed you. What does that mean? How does that relate to my club work? Well, it relates to the fact that I was exploring freedom myself, as well as documenting everybody else exploring that freedom. And that has only ever continued, in terms of myself is my work. And we're quite similar in that way, I think. What I'm documenting is what I'm interested in. So I documented the nightlife in the UK. I also was running a website at the time, this was before Facebook and MySpace, which was a way of galvanising community. And then when I graduated, I actually studied performance, not anything to do with art or photography. I basically escaped to New York, and I continued to document the dance floors over there, alongside female drummers, which is a strange niche. I like niches within niches, minorities within minorities as a theme. And I think that then that has now continued to protest and pride, like you said. But essentially it's about us finding ourselves, finding our freedom, and finding a sense of how we can perform that. And that's what I'm always interested in.
You said so many interesting things there that I would love to unpack. I definitely want to come back to what you said about being here in a women's art fair and kind of fitting in and gender diversity within that. So let's stick a pin in that for a second, because that's a big topic that I think is really worth discussing. But just what you just said there about kind of performing and identity and how that connects with your creative practice, I think is something that's really worth talking about, because both of you in your work, you give a lot of yourself. You're very generous. I think you both share space and share platforms, but you both share your own experiences. And we all here, I'm pretty sure, know and believe that art really has the power to change things, to change the world, to help people see other perspectives. It's why we're all involved in the art world or here visiting an art fair. And I think when artists and creatives put their own experiences into the work and do it in a way that allows audiences to connect or find connection, find a sense of identification, or even reflect on their own experiences. I think that's such a gift to the world, and that's why I'm a curator, because I want to create platforms for artists to do that. So Daniel, I wonder if you could talk a bit about some of your work and how you, I've heard you speaking about your own experiences very openly in a way that really helps a lot of people, and how that comes through in your work.
I've got an option. Either I keep very private and don't tell anyone anything, or I share my experiences with the world. Unfortunately, I've experienced the craziest things you can imagine, like being stabbed or beaten up, or stalkers or bulimia, or all sorts of terrible, horrible things that no one really should go through. But we're all going through similar situations of negative. We all go through these, family deaths. Something might touch somebody, and I sometimes get messages from young people or older, anyone, that respond to them and say, thanks, you helped me. Like I just recently, I spoke about eating disorders years ago, and I recently started a therapy for it, this after 25 years of not doing anything, between 2 different eating disorders, and I've had so many people reach out and talk about it, and if I've got a platform, I have to use that. It's the same as human rights or queer rights or climate change. It's all going to affect us, and I think it's very important to talk about these things. And I've worked with people like Vivienne Westwood and Julian Assange, and I believe in like freedom of speech and freedom of information, so we can all gain and just get better through life. And I do that through some of my exhibitions. Sometimes I don't have to say anything, and people see it. My big shows, now I've curated rooms about activism, which I hadn't, so there's been like 7 shows, I think, and 6 of them I didn't really express any political or activist things. I just thought that people would find them, and the City of Culture came to me and said, do you want to do a room about it? And I said, yeah, but I don't want it to look like some crazy activist getting angry. So I painted it gold and made it look fabulous, and people really responded to it. People with opposed opinions came in and were like, oh, okay, I get it. I love building bridges. I've somehow managed to get Qatar to say they wouldn't arrest LGBTQI as people, and I worked 7 months on that. The world cancelled me. I told nobody about it. I worked with the royal family and Naomi Campbell on one side and the FIFA and the government on the other, and I kind of played them off against each other. And all of a sudden I was asked to go to Qatar, and I was like, actually, I said, if you said you wouldn't arrest us, I will come, so this is a perfect opportunity, and I didn't have to go to the World Cup, so I don't know, it's interesting looking at sculpture. I could be in like the most conservative town in the most conservative state, like Mississippi, and get the kind of, the guys in the room who question my existence, not hating me, to eventually, I found one thing in common, which is a friend, and I said to them, they were like, hey, you boy, what are you doing here? And I said, actually, I came to this town because it's quite incredible. It's like a Hollywood movie set. We're so lucky to live here. I had a friend that told me all about it, and his name was Bill, and I miss him very much. And they were like, Bill, like it? And I was like, yes. And all of a sudden, the whole town, like, via their Facebooks, like, they were like the old guys that had the approval on everything, and started sharing pictures of me, and they asked me to curate an arts festival, but they didn't want me there at the beginning. So it's interesting what you can do as a living sculpture, not just look fun or whatever, colourful, but you can actually make a difference.
And you really do make a difference, and it's just so inspiring always to hear you talk about that work. But I think as well, even talking about having the rooms about activism within the exhibition and making it look fabulous and golden, it's the power of art, and it's that visual language that you're harnessing, and it really does bring people in. And I think I find it with the book as well, but Bex, with your work too. I think all of us tackle subjects that are inherently political, that for a lot of people can be quite difficult to ask about, or people don't really know sometimes how to have conversations about some of these sensitive topics. But actually, art can often create space to have those conversations, or to bring people together around something that feels non-confrontational, and then actually you can be quite constructive together as a group. And Bex, I know that that's something that happens with your work, because I've seen it in action. You photograph people with their placards at protests, and some of the things that the placards say, sometimes it's a real gut punch moment. There's people who are really fighting for their rights. And so I wonder if you could tell us a bit about the response that you get to your work, and how you feel that it makes a difference, which I know it does.
Yeah, thank you. I think the interesting thing is a lot of the response happens behind the scenes, in the sense that in my inbox, in my sort of Instagram messages, and that's stuff that I don't necessarily share with people. That's messages that I get from parents of trans children that say, thank you so much for putting that publicly in the pages of Vogue, or in Vice, or in sort of media that the rest of the time, all you get is negative stories of trans people or trans children. And I think that keeps me going. It does, in the sense that, as a person that I've been talking to for the last 2 years, who is a married person who is a Christian, they live in New York, and they message me literally like every couple of months to update me on their life in conjunction with what they've seen me doing, and how that, they say, because I saw that story that you shared, or you told that story, or you photographed that pride, it gave me confidence to go to the shops with a bit of makeup on, or to tell my person at church. And those are just little anecdotes, but they're really important. They're really important to me, because what I'm doing isn't easy. It takes its toll. It takes its toll because I'm the person who's out there, being that trans person, being that public trans person, but also the responsibility of telling that story. I have been, I mentioned sort of where I put my photos, but that in itself is important. For the last 3 years, I've documented trans pride for British Vogue, and that's not a sort of in a bragging way. That's in a, what does it feel for those people on those pages to be in Vogue? And one of the images that's actually in Gemma's book, and that's in a book that's coming out next week, is of a very dear friend of mine, that's become a dear friend of mine, Yusuf.
Let's show the picture. I'll find it.
Yusuf, when I met him, had just arrived in the UK as an asylum seeker. Thankfully, he's now got refugee status, and he came from Kuwait. And I took that image of him, and that image, he called me the next day, and when I said, by the way, that's going to be in Vogue, and the article came out, and he was in floods of tears, and he said, do you realise how important that image is? There are people in the Middle East that have printed out, trans people in the Middle East, printed out that image, they put it in their cupboards. It gives them hope. It gives them hope that somebody can go to another country and can escape and can live their life. And that's just one story, in conjunction with others. But that's why I do what I do. I've always done what I've done. And the irony is that those people help me find who I am. They give me confidence. They give me confidence to live in the world as a trans person, and to be okay if I'm misgendered, or to be okay if I'm asked to leave the bathroom, or to be okay reading the news every single day, or to know that even with a government change, things have not got better for trans people. They just haven't. We thought that it would when the Tories got out, and it hasn't happened. And I don't know how to make peace with that. One thing that I'm doing now is that take myself away from the sphere of journalism, because I can't sit in that world anymore, with the way that journalism has treated trans people. And so I'm walking through another door now, and I'm walking through into this art world. Because I think that actually this art world can give more acceptance than many other worlds can. Because we're all in this room because we understand that there's things here that are a way of expressing something that maybe you don't get, maybe you don't need to get, but it's something that makes you connect. And I'll just finish on this sort of anecdote, is that I sold an image recently to a private collector who is not part of my community. She is cisgendered, which means that she was born the gender that she still identifies as. So, for example, I don't. Right? That's how I'll just a bit of a explainer here. She's married, she's got children, she's straight. But she wanted to buy an image that was of a person at Trans Pride. On their back it's written, "Can you see us now?" And the reason I'm mentioning that is because that image, when she spotted it, gave her goosebumps. Because it allowed her to see herself, even though that's not a trans person. It's all about finding a sense of belonging. That's what my work really comes down to. It's me finding that, it's somebody else finding that, it's finding yourself in those messages, which it doesn't matter if it's about one thing, we'll always find a way to understand ourselves through art. That's genuinely what I believe. And I'm really grateful that people like you, Gemma, put people like me and my work in books like this, because it's just this constant domino effect of people learning and sharing and being part of something. So yeah, thanks for me being part of your world that you've brought together in this book, and then thanks to everybody here for being part of this conversation. See how it goes?
I hope you know you've made half the room cry. And this is why I've invited you onto this panel. Thank you very much for sharing that so passionately. You spoke a lot about community, you spoke about sense of belonging, and that is something I know very much that art has given me, is a sense of validation as a queer cis woman, as a queer mother. To see myself reflected in art is really meaningful to me. And to have an event like this that is really focused on championing women and female experiences. But I think it's important for us to come back to that point that came earlier and really think about inclusivity and gender inclusivity and what that looks like, because we do live in a time where society is still very patriarchal, can be very binary, and art and creative spaces are often spaces that give us a way to think about how we can expand some of those things or challenge them. Daniel, you spoke at the beginning about just you being the way you are, very authentically dressing in this fabulous way, is challenging the status quo, and I think also giving people an opportunity to just take pause and think about their own experiences. So then you spend a lot of your time in the fashion world, but also in the art world. We run into each other at art events all the time. So what has it been like for you kind of carving space in the art world, and how does your I would say, how do you feel coming into an art space for women, and how do you think about gender and your own kind of fluid gender presentation within that space?
Working in the art world has always been really weird. So when I was a model, they would come in, I'd go to castings and they were like, oh, you're too fat, you're too thin, you walk like a girl, you walk like a boy. I didn't even know. I was like, I don't think I know where I am yet alone. To think about these situations. And then going through the fashion world, it's pretty cool. I saw, if you weren't, years ago at Vogue, if you weren't the son or daughter of one of the editors or something who worked there, it was kind of horrible. And that's what the fashion world has been like for years. There was so much racism, there was so much misogyny, there was so, guys, like the male models were treated terribly as well. And it's kind of like a lot of these people were hurt in the industry, so they just took it out on other people, and that's my own experience. I don't know, I did an H&M commercial which kind of changed. It was a game changer, even though they're not great, like with pollution and terrible things. I didn't know about those things at the beginning, at the time of so I did an H&M commercial which went globally. It was all about recycling, and I thought, okay, I'm going to do that, that's interesting. And I presented like this. I told them I wouldn't buy their clothes, but their jewellery. Because I said I won't wear recycled clothes and tiaras, and I'll just wear your jewellery. And I kept thinking of Jar Jar Binks. And so I called it, if you ever see the images, I was thinking of Jar Jar Binks from Star Wars. So that had like a really diverse campaign. Every kind of person you saw, and people were either outraged or copied it. So it was one or the other, and it was really fascinating to see after that campaign, the industry changed. It actually did. And they were promoting recycling, which a big store like that is kind of a weird concept. So I don't know. It's really interesting. With myself, like living a sculpture, I just know that things suit my face or my body shape. So when people were talking about gender and sexuality and things, I never really spoke about them. Like in my art, I don't think I need to. I don't think I need to say anything. And when I was doing my TED talk, I did write in about my activism. I did a TED talk in 2008-19 in Vancouver, and it took me 3 months to write. And I wrote about my activism and being part of the queer community. And in the end, I thought, I'm going to take it out because all the messages that I want to give is to the whole world, not just to groups of people. I know when some people watch a certain thing, they'll turn it off. So if they hear certain words, they'll be like, in the Middle East, if they hear LGBTQIA+, they're going to not watch anymore. Maybe not. So I thought, okay, I'll take it all out and I'll I'll just say exactly what I want to say to everyone. And it goes to everyone, and it's been seen like over 10 million times. And it's me up there looking like this, wearing armour and crystals. And I thought, okay, I can put the message across. I don't need to say anything more after that. And it was very effective. So sometimes, strategy-wise, I don't need to say anything. Like I just present, and people respond to it. So all kinds of people that you would never imagine. Like I know it's a horrible thing to say, but I meet fascists all the time, and I stay in contact with them because I'm able to talk to them, and they change their minds on things, and it's kind of fascinating. And I love doing that. Like I love speaking to people with opposed opinions. And I mean, I think everyone should do that, and then the world would be a better place. But instead of like screaming and shouting and throwing stones and bricks at each other, yeah, that's where I am with that.
Which is so constructive, which is totally what we need. And yeah, I mean, I think that so much of what you do and how you present just goes way beyond gender anyway. And that to me feels very futuristic and progressive, and is a world I want to live in and raise my kids in. But Bex, you kind of gave us that like kind of lovely intro to this concept of coming into the art world, and you're sort of making this transition, another transition into the art world this time. And you have a solo show coming up in a commercial art gallery, which is super exciting. Like, how does the art world feel to you, and what do you think can happen? And then, so I'm going to ask you that, and then the question I'm going to end on for all of us is, what more do we think the art world could do, could be doing? Like kind of top tips, practical takeaways for everyone, because I always think that's helpful. But first, if you can just talk about your experience of being in the world and what that's been like for you.
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like I'm constantly coming out. I came out as a lesbian when I was 14. I came out as trans about 6 years ago, and now I feel like I'm kind of coming out as an artist. So welcome to my world. And I say that because it's hard to conceive yourself as something that you don't know if it's part of something for you, if that makes sense. I didn't train as an artist. As I said earlier, I studied theatre. So it would be easier for me to see myself as a performer. But I think it's funny because I say this to my partner all the time. I'm like, I don't know if I'm kind of an artist. She just says, you're on the walls of one of the most important museums in the world, Bex. I think you're an artist now. I'm like, okay, all right, fine, I'll take it. But does it matter? I don't know. Does it matter? Does it matter if what role we play? I think that I want to claim this world, as I said earlier, because the outfit I was wearing earlier doesn't fit anymore. And I think that that's also part of why we come out, is because the life we were living before just doesn't suit us anymore, and so we can only come out, or as I like to call it, come in. And I think that it's important to infiltrate these worlds that I didn't think are for us, because then we lead the way for others. I think I was saying to somebody earlier about keeping the door open and not letting it sort of like shut behind us. And then when you open the door a little bit, then somebody else will come in behind you, and then before you know it, there's a whole heap of people that have just walked through, and then the door has to get wider. And I think that's kind of what I feel about the art world, actually. I think that it's not been that long that there's actually enough women artists. There's still not enough as far as I'm concerned. There's not enough women artists that are mothers. There's not enough working class artists. There's not enough people of colour artists. There's just so many minorities that don't have enough room in this world. And there's certainly not enough space for trans artists yet. So I'm already answering your question, what's next? What's next is that hopefully you don't have to be on this panel. That's what's next. You know, hopefully we don't have to have a women in art world. You know, hopefully the whole world is open to all, but that's just a dream that possibly can't happen. And so until it can, I have hope. I have a desire, which is for people to not be scared of trans people, for people to not be scared of trans artists, for people to not be scared that if they use she, her instead of they, them, it's okay, just quickly correct yourself and then move on. Because that's not what matters. What matters is that everybody just gets a chance to be themselves. And in terms of my personal work, it's so that they can see themselves. If you can't see yourself, you can't try and be something that you didn't know existed. Which probably speaks to you too. You know, we just have to be ourselves. So yeah.
And of course, the irony is, in terms of queer and trans people coming into the art world, actually, queer and trans people have been always leading arts and culture for all of time anyway. It's just those people have not also had this opportunity to live freely and openly. And so, you know, it's kind of, in my mind, a lot of it's about bringing those things together and really being open and celebratory and realistic as well about life experiences. But yeah, perhaps Daniel closes out top tips.
Yeah, I mean, trans, non-binary people, queer people, I mean, they're my favourite people in the world. They're the most interesting, creative, intelligent, fascinating people. And they have been, like, I travelled the world, like, I've been all over the place. They've existed forever, literally, in every culture and history and background. And everyone's saying, oh, this is all new. And I'm like, no, look at the Hijra. The reason Solihull was banned in the UK is because the Hijra army defeated the British, and they were all trans, non-binary, gender people. That was like Victorian times. So that's literally why that was banned, you know. It's kind of, just people are so ignorant today. And I don't know, I think for me, in my life, you were there at the beginning when I started in clubs, I always tried to throw everyone in the room together and see what happens. And they had the most incredible time through these crazy parties. And I just invited everyone from all walks of life, and they had literally so many incredible things come from it. And I think it's just good to mix up everyone all the time and bring everybody up with you. And I try and, like, you know, there's a situation, like quite a big situation recently, and I was like, well, why are they not included? And then I'm like, oh, we didn't think, and people don't think. So it's always good to think ahead of who really deserves these situations. Not that, yeah, I don't know what I'm saying, but
I think what you're saying is throw more parties, which is a great note to end on. You know, I think that's it. That's the takeaway. That's the key takeaway. Throw more parties and invite everyone to come. Yeah, exactly.
I also want to say as well, not that I'm like Gemma's PR pitch, but buy Gemma's book. See in books. And also my own way of sharing my work is on Instagram. So my name is my handle. And I'm in the process of beginning a bigger journey, which is documenting Pride around the world. So if you want to see what Pride looks like around the world, I've just been to Belgrade. In 2 weeks' time I'm going to Taiwan, and fingers crossed, hopefully after that, the Arctic. So that's another way of seeing what these worlds look like, is to follow what we put out there in the world, all three of us. So yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you so much. You're both amazing, and I'm so grateful that you came and shared all of that with us. Thank you so much.